Welcome to LinesToGo installation videos. Today we will be removing and installing brake lines on a 2008 Chev 3500 HD using LinesToGo part number BLC-213-SS. While this particular installation is being performed on a 2008 Chev 3500 HD, this set of lines will also fit the following year, make, and models as shown on your screen now. LinesToGo lines are made using original equipment end forms and fittings that are CNC bent for an easy and precise installation. We have also upgraded to stainless steel braided Teflon hoses for rust protection and to prevent surface fouling. These have an unlimited shelf life and anti-static PTFE liner. This set of LinesToGo lines are made using 304L stainless steel for rust resistance that exceeds OEM standards. Tech tip: disconnect the battery before working on a vehicle to reduce the risk of shorting out the battery on tools or lines. LinesToGo lines are made with a sectional design for easier installation. We also use color-coded unions on our sectioned lines. Just match the colors at the connections. Make sure to depressurize the fuel system before starting the installation. Tools required: 7mm, 10mm, 13mm, 15mm, and 22mm sockets and ratchet, 10mm, 13mm, and 14mm wrenches, cutting pliers, flat blade screwdriver, drain pan, LinesToGo disconnect tools part number 3145-01 and part number 5230-01, jack and jack stands. The level of difficulty for this installation is considered to be medium. Start by disconnecting both batteries using a 10mm socket. Disconnect both connections at the master cylinder using a 13mm wrench. Underneath the vehicle at the ABS module, remove all 5 fittings using a 13mm wrench. Raise the vehicle and remove both front wheels using a 22mm socket. Remove both front inner fenders using a flat blade screwdriver to remove the plastic push clips, along with a 10mm socket to remove the bolt at the front and a 7mm socket to remove the screws around the top and rear of the fender. At the driver's side front of the vehicle, open the plastic brackets securing the lines using a flat blade screwdriver. Remove the primary and secondary lines from the vehicle. Using a 13mm wrench, remove the threaded fitting from the left front flex hose. Remove the line from any plastic clips and remove the line from the vehicle. Using a pair of cutting pliers, cut the right front line at the front of the left front wheel well. Remove the rear section of the right front line from the vehicle. At the right front of the vehicle, use a 13mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting from the flex hose. Underneath the front of the vehicle, use a 15mm socket to remove the front lower cover. Remove the remaining section of the right front line from the plastic clips along the frame. Remove the right front line from the vehicle. To remove the rear extension line, the fuel tank will need to be removed. This process is slightly different depending on the configuration of your vehicle. To begin the removal of the fuel tank, start by disconnecting the fuel filler hose and the vent hose from the filler neck. If the vehicle is equipped with an auxiliary fuel tank, remove the vent hose on the tank side of the T-fitting. Under the vehicle, use a 15mm socket to remove the 4 bolts that secure the plastic lower tank cover and remove it from the vehicle. Support the fuel tank and use a 15mm socket to remove the bolts that secure the fuel tank straps and remove the straps from the vehicle. Carefully lower the fuel tank until you can get access to the fuel line connections at the sending unit. At the sending unit, use the LinesToGo disconnect tool, part number 3145-01, to disconnect the 1/2-inch feed line. To disconnect the return line, use the LinesToGo disconnect tool, part number 5230-01. Remove the electrical connector from the sending unit. Continue to carefully lower the fuel tank out of position and remove it from underneath the vehicle. At the top of the rear flex hose, use a 13mm wrench to remove the threaded fitting. Using a pair of cutting pliers, cut the rear feed line at the center to make removal easier. Remove the rear extension line from the plastic clips located along the frame. Remove both sections of the rear line from the vehicle. To begin the installation of your new LinesToGo stainless steel brake lines, start by installing the left front line labeled BLC 213-03 into position. Start the threaded fitting into the left front flex hose and the ABS module and tighten using a 13mm wrench. Next, route the rear section of the right front brake line labeled BLC 213-04A into position. Start the threaded fitting into the ABS module by hand and tighten using a 13mm wrench. Underneath the front of the vehicle, install the next section of the right front line labeled BLC 213-04B into position. Secure the line into the plastic clips along the frame. Start the fitting at the right front flex hose and tighten using a 13mm wrench. At the front of the driver's side wheel well, start the threaded fitting into the union noting the LinesToGo color-coded connections. Tighten both fittings into the union using two 14mm wrenches. Secure the line in the plastic clips along the frame. Next, feed the primary brake line labeled BLC 213-01 into position. Start the fitting into the rear port and the master cylinder along with at the ABS module. Tighten both fittings using a 13mm wrench. Next, feed the secondary line labeled BLC 213-02 into position. Start the threaded fittings into the master cylinder along with at the ABS module. Tighten both fittings using a 13mm wrench. Replace any remaining plastic clips onto the brake lines. Next, feed the rear section of the rear extension line labeled BLC 213-05B into position. Start the threaded fitting into the top of the rear flex hose. Next, feed the front section of the rear extension line labeled BLC 213-05A into position. Start the threaded fitting into the ABS module along with the union at the center of the line. Tighten the union using two 14mm wrenches. Tighten the fittings in the ABS module and at the rear flex hose using a 13mm wrench. Place the fuel tank back into position underneath the vehicle and raise it until you can connect the fuel lines and the electrical connector. Once connected, continue to raise the tank into position, making sure to route the filler hose and vent hose over the frame. Replace the fuel tank straps and secure them using a 15mm socket. Remove the support from under the tank and replace the plastic cover using a 15mm socket to replace the bolts. Reconnect the filler hose and vent hose to the filler tube and secure the clamps using a flat blade screwdriver. Bleed all four wheels using a 10mm wrench. Make sure to keep the brake fluid reservoir topped up. Replace both front inner fenders, securing them using the plastic push clips along with a 10mm and a 7mm socket to replace the bolts. Install both front wheels and torque to spec using a 22mm socket. This concludes the installation of brake lines on a 2008 Chev 3500 HD with LinesToGo part number BLC-213-SS. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or would like to purchase the lines you saw today, please call us at 1-855-781-5992. Email us at info@linestogo.com or check out our website link below. And don't forget to take advantage of our free 2-day shipping. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button below, and we will see you on our next video.